Welcome to Relation Tales. Please like this video and subscribe Relation Tales. We're grateful for each and every one of you. Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let's begin. There was something about Erin that caught my eye the moment I saw her back in college. It wasn't just her beauty. Oh, that was obvious. It was the way she carried herself, like someone who'd seen the weight of the world and still chose to smile. She had this calm fierceness in her, like a storm wrapped in silk. We met during our sophomore year. I was majoring in economics, she was deep into sociology, and yet we found ourselves sharing corners of the same library, same coffee shop, same broken-down campus benches like it was fate carving out space for us. At first, our connection was lighthearted, even silly, trading glances between bookshelves, bumping into each other at the lunch line. But when we finally spoke, I realized Erin wasn't just smart. She was magnetic. I was pulled into her orbit without resistance. Before long, we were inseparable. Those college years were golden. No deadlines about life, no looming bills, just dreams and ambition, and love, the kind you think can survive anything. But life doesn't take promises into account. It throws bricks. Just before graduation, Erin told me she was pregnant. I froze. It wasn't the idea of a child that scared me. It was the weight of responsibility. I didn't have a job, didn't have a plan. All I had was a diploma I hadn't even received yet, and this gnawing fear I wouldn't be enough. But I swallowed that fear and did what I thought a man should do. I proposed. We got married in a small, humble ceremony. Just a few friends, her aunt, and my younger brother. No bells, no music, just whispered vows and trembling hands. A few months later, our daughter Camille was born. She had Erin's eyes, those sharp, knowing eyes. And holding her for the first time made every worry dissolve, if only for a moment. I was no longer just a man, I was a father. Everything I did from that day forward was for that child. Every early morning job, every sacrifice, every sleepless night, all of it. I took whatever job I could, warehouse night shifts, delivery runs, even standing in for temp security when someone didn't show. It was brutal, but necessary. Erin stayed home, nursing Camille, and I carried the weight gladly. I never resented it. Camille's laughter was worth every ache in my back. Over the years, we built something. Not perfect, but real. Erin eventually returned to work once Camille started school. We found rhythm in our days. Mornings were a symphony of alarm clocks, cereal boxes, and missing socks. Evenings were filled with soft conversations, half-watched TV shows, and Camille's homework complaints. But the truth is, routine can be deceptive. Sometimes it masks cracks, and sometimes it's the silence between those routines that screams the loudest. By the time Camille turned 18, I began noticing small shifts. Erin's smile lingered less. Her phone rarely left her hand. She'd laugh at texts she never explained. During dinners, she'd zone out, sometimes missing entire conversations. I told myself it was stress, empty nest anxiety. Maybe Camille was already discussing college offers. Maybe Erin just felt the weight of change. I wanted to believe that, until the night I suggested a small family getaway, just the three of us before Camille left. Erin didn't even lift her eyes from the screen. Maybe, she mumbled, scrolling endlessly. That maybe cut me deeper than any no ever could. That night I couldn't sleep, not because of suspicion, but because of grief. The kind you feel when you know something beautiful is rotting and there's nothing you can do about it. But what I didn't expect was how deep the rot went. One rainy afternoon, Erin asked for help accessing an old email she'd forgotten the password to. Years ago, she had set my email as recovery. When the reset came through, I helped her, typed in a new password, but something in me, some instinct I didn't know I had, refused to close the page. I scrolled. At first, nothing. Just mundane subscriptions, junk, occasional reminders. Then I saw an iCloud sync, messages, and I opened it. It felt like opening a grave you didn't know existed. There it was, conversation after conversation with someone named Nathan. Not a name I recognized, but his words were intimate. His messages were sprinkled with nostalgia and longing, as if they shared memories too sacred for casual friendship. And Erin, She wasn't rejecting his affection. She was feeding it. I still remember that weekend in Vancouver. One message read, "You told me you regretted leaving." And her reply, "I didn't want to. I just chose what felt right at the time." I stopped breathing. Photos, memories, moments I never witnessed. Photos I'd never seen of her, taken during the exact time she told me she had gone to stay with her cousin before we got married. I had believed her, naively, stupidly. And now, 2 decades later, I was staring at what might be the biggest lie of my life. There was a particular message that broke me. "Nathan, you think Camille knows?" "Aaron, she doesn't need to. Nobody does. It would ruin everything." I shut the laptop. My entire body shook. That night, I lay beside Aaron in bed like a stranger, my heart thudding against secrets, and my mind screaming one question: was Camille even mine? The next morning, I woke up before the sun. I stared at the ceiling as Erin slept beside me, peaceful, like she hadn't detonated a bomb under my life. I wondered how many mornings had looked just like this, her asleep, me already at war with the day, and how many of those mornings were built on lies. My heart ached, not just for me, but for Camille. She was my daughter, my baby girl. I taught her how to ride a bike. I'd held her when she broke her arm. I'd kissed her forehead every night for 18 years. But if Nathan's message had any truth to it, I might be just a man who happened to be there, not her father. I couldn't let that question hang over my life. I needed the truth. Quietly, methodically, I collected what I needed. A few hair strands from her brush, a toothbrush, one of my old shirts she still wore sometimes. I shipped the samples off under a pseudonym, the lab located in another city. I didn't tell anyone, not a soul. Waiting for those results was like dragging my skin over broken glass every single day. At work, I was a ghost. At home, a machine. I smiled when I needed to. I nodded when spoken to. I said, "I love you," like an actor reading lines. But inside, I was already dead. The results came in 7 days later. I opened the envelope with trembling hands in my study behind a locked door. Probability of paternity, 0%. I stared at the page. The black ink blurred, as if the words themselves didn't want me to read them again. But I did, again and again, until the truth settled in my chest like a knife I'd swallowed by accident. She wasn't mine. Biologically, Camille wasn't my daughter. For a long time, I just sat there, silent, cold. A strange numbness overtook me, like my brain was trying to save me from myself. Then the grief exploded. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet sobs, shoulders shaking, fists clenched, jaw locked. It wasn't about the biology. It was the betrayal. 19 years. 19 years of building a life around a lie. 19 years of birthdays, Christmas mornings, school drop-offs, scraped knees, science fairs. All of it under false pretenses. Erin had let me believe. Worse, she'd wanted me to believe. And now, she still had the audacity to play house like nothing had happened. I knew then this couldn't be fixed. Not with apologies. Not with explanations. Not with tears. This needed closure. And revenge. But not the loud, impulsive kind. No, I would give her something far worse. The truth. I waited until Camille left for school 2 days later. I couldn't confront Erin with her there. I wanted her to hear it from me. Uninterrupted, unfiltered. No spinning. No manipulations. While I walked into the living room, Erin was curled on the sofa, sipping her coffee, scrolling her phone. Always that damn phone. She didn't even look up. "Hey," I said, voice calm, deadly still. "How long have you been in touch with Nathan?" The cup froze midair. Her eyes lifted slowly. "What are you talking about?" she asked, too casual. But her face said everything. A flicker of panic. "Don't lie," I said. "You and I both know it wasn't just messages." She sat up straight. "It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is." She paused. "I didn't do anything. We just talked." "That's it." I nodded. "And Camille?" She blinked. "What?" "You never told me there was a chance she might not be mine. Did you know all along? Or did you just pretend the odds didn't matter?" She stood, face flushed. "Why were you even going through my messages?" "That's a violation of." "There it is." I cut her off, a bitter laugh escaping. "You lied to me for 19 years, and you're mad that I found out." She didn't respond. "Tell me something, Aaron," I said quietly, stepping closer. "When you looked at me every day, every year, did you ever feel guilty? Or was I just a convenient fool for your fairy tale?" Tears brimmed in her eyes, but I saw no remorse, only shame at being caught. At that moment, the door opened behind me. Camille, her school bag on her shoulder, earbuds in, hair messy from rushing. "What's going on?" she asked, looking between us. Aaron's lips parted, ready to lie, no doubt. But I lifted a hand to stop her. "I found out your mother has been in contact with her ex, a man from her past." Camille frowned. "Okay, but talking to someone doesn't mean she cheated." "That's not." I reached into my pocket, pulled out the envelope. "I didn't say she cheated," I said. "I said she lied. To both of us." I handed Camille the paper. She looked down, puzzled, then read. Her lips moved slowly, soundlessly. Her eyes scanned the lines again, and again. Then stillness. Complete and utter stillness. When she looked up, her entire face had changed. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw anything. I simply said, "You have 30 minutes. I want both of you out of this house." Aaron gasped. Camille opened her mouth, but no words came out. I turned to Aaron one last time, the anger buried beneath decades of devotion. "You made me raise another man's child. You built a life on lies. You robbed me of the truth. I gave you everything I had, and all I ever asked for was honesty. And then I walked away, because there was nothing left to say." The door didn't slam. They left quietly. 30 minutes later, the house was hollow, stripped of their voices, their shoes by the door, the photos that once filled the hallway. I stood in the living room and listened to the silence like it was a new language. The air had changed, lighter, yet heavy with the echo of betrayal. I wasn't sure how I was supposed to feel. Relieved? Devastated? Angry? All of it collided inside me. But one thing I did know, I didn't want revenge born out of rage. I wanted revenge that taught, that exposed, that made sure Aaron would never forget the man she chose to betray. I took a week off from work, not because I was broken, but because I needed a plan. Aaron had played me like a fool for 19 years. I wasn't going to react like one now. I gathered everything, every screenshot I had from that iMessage thread, the DNA test results, even the timestamps on those vacation photos. Then I called a lawyer, a damn good one. Divorce was a battlefield. Aaron assumed she had rights, that because she had been my wife for nearly 2 decades, she'd walk away with half. But her assumption was built on sand. I kept every receipt, every deposit, every transaction tied to our joint life. And most importantly, I had proof of paternity fraud, a term I didn't even know existed until this hell began. It changed everything. She was stunned when her lawyer called her. But that was just the beginning. I went a step further. I sold a house. My name was solely on the deed, something Aaron had once called a boring paperwork detail. Now, it was her eviction notice. I moved into a smaller apartment on the other side of town. Clean, quiet, detached from everything I had once called home. I left Camille a letter, not out of obligation, but because despite everything, I had loved her like a daughter. I wrote it with trembling hands. "Camille, I don't know what you're feeling right now. Maybe anger, maybe confusion, maybe betrayal. But none of this is your fault. What your mother and I had, or didn't have, that's between us. I loved you from the moment I held you. That was real. I don't regret any of those memories. But I can't pretend anymore. I can't build a future on top of a lie I didn't agree to. You deserve to know the truth, even if it hurts. Be kind to yourself. Be better than we were." Isaac, I didn't expect a reply, and I didn't get one. In the weeks that followed, Aaron's life began to crack. I heard from mutual friends. She moved in with Nathan. But it didn't take long for the cracks in their fantasy to show. Nathan wasn't the man she had romanticized over texts and memories. He had a temper, a trail of failed relationships, and a son from a previous marriage he hadn't seen in years. Aaron, who had once mocked my boring loyalty, now found herself babysitting a man-child with delusions of grandeur. I didn't reach out, but I watched from a distance. One afternoon, I received an email from Aaron. Just one line. I didn't mean to ruin everything. I didn't reply. "You see, Forgiveness isn't a gift you give someone to make them feel better. It's a choice, and I wasn't ready to make it. I pour myself into work, into rebuilding, into becoming a version of myself that wasn't defined by pain. I reconnected with old friends, took up running, learned how to sleep through the night without clenching my jaw. But most importantly, I started a journal. Not the Dear Diary kind. No, this was my truth log. Every day, I wrote one paragraph. Not about Aaron, not about Camille, but about me, who I was before the lies, who I wanted to become now. Some entries were short. Others were blood on the page. But it helped. It reminded me I was more than what was done to me. Months later, on a rainy afternoon, I received a phone call. Blocked number. I let it ring twice. Then answered. It was Camille. Her voice was small. Unsure. Can we talk? I sat in my car for nearly an hour before walking into the cafe where Camille had asked to meet. Rain tapped on the windshield like a nervous rhythm. My stomach was tight, my hands cold. I didn't know what she wanted. I didn't know what I wanted either. Closure? A fight? Maybe just the truth in her voice, for once, not her mother's. When I walked in, she was already seated. Put up, hair messy, no makeup. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her coffee. Not the confident, quick-witted girl I raised. This was a version of her I didn't recognize. She stood when she saw me, eyes wide and wet, like she'd been holding her breath since the day I left. I didn't hug her. I couldn't. I just nodded. We sat. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Just the clatter of plates and quiet conversations around us. Finally, she broke the silence. Was any of it real for you? She whispered. I looked at her. My throat tightened. I could hear the child in her voice, the desperate need to believe in something. All of it, I said. Every moment I spent with you. Every night I stayed up when you were sick. Every birthday, every book I read you, every time you called me Dad, that was all real. For me, her eyes fell to her coffee. A tear dropped into it like a confession. I didn't know, she said. About Nathan. About any of it. She never told me. I believed her. As angry as I was, I knew Camille had grown up in the same illusion I had. Maybe hers was even more fragile. At least I had built the lie. She was the lie, without choosing it. She's not doing well, she added. Nathan left. Turns out, he wasn't who she thought he was. I almost laughed, but I didn't, because it didn't matter. She still lied, I said. For 19 years, she made choices that destroyed all three of us. I know, she whispered. Then she looked at me with those familiar eyes, the ones that made me doubt the DNA test, if only for a second. So, where do we go from here? I want to tell her I didn't know, but I did. We don't go anywhere until you understand something, I said. I'm not your biological father, but for almost 2 decades, I was your dad. I taught you how to be brave, how to face life. I gave you all I had, but you're an adult now. You have to decide who you want to be, separate from her, separate from me. And if you still want me in your life, it has to be on truth. No illusions. No rewriting the past. She nodded slowly. I do want you in my life. Then we start there, I said quietly, with truth. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It wasn't even a clean one, but it was honest. Later that week, Aaron emailed again. This time longer. Isaac, you have every right to hate me. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know something. I never planned to hurt you. I thought if I buried the truth deep enough, it would die on its own. But it didn't. It festered. And I know now that hiding it was the worst thing I ever did. Camille wants to keep seeing you. I didn't stop her. I wouldn't, because I know that you were the only real parent she ever had. I'm sorry. Aaron. I didn't respond. She wanted peace. I wanted distance. That was the real truth between us. Weeks passed. Camille started college. She visited me once a month. We didn't talk about the DNA anymore. We talked about life, hers, mine, what she wanted to do, who she wanted to become. Slowly, painfully, she began to heal. And in doing so, I did too. But the revenge? That wasn't over yet, because Aaron had no idea what I'd done behind the scenes. Not just with the house, but with Nathan. Revenge isn't always rage. Sometimes it's precision. It's patience. It's the quiet burn of a man who's been dismantled and chooses to rebuild. Not just rise, but rise higher than ever before, and let his betrayers watch. I never confronted Nathan directly. He wasn't worth the breath. But I knew a man like him had skeletons. So I hired someone, a discreet private investigator. Not to cause trouble. Not yet. Just to learn. Well, I learned. Nathan had debts. Serious ones. Gambling. Bad real estate ventures. A court case he thought was sealed. Wasn't. The man was hanging by threads, pretending he had it all together. Aaron had left me for a fantasy that was barely surviving off credit cards and borrowed time. So I made a few calls. Nothing illegal. Just helpful nudges. The lender Nathan owed most of his money to. I bought out the debt. Quietly. Under a different name. The land deal he'd been banking on. I swept in with a better offer and killed it at the last minute. His job at that boutique consulting firm in another city. I knew a guy. That guy owed me. 1 month later, Nathan was jobless, blacklisted, and on the verge of foreclosure. The same man Aaron once whispered sweet nothings to was now sleeping on a friend's couch, begging her to take him back. She didn't, and that broke her more than losing me ever did. But I wasn't done yet. I wrote a memoir, not the kind you put in bookstores, the kind you leave behind. 50 pages, titled, Loyalty Isn't a Promise, It's a Choice. I printed 5 copies. 1 for Camille, 1 for Aaron, 1 for Nathan, 1 for my attorney, and 1 for myself. I wrote every detail, every sacrifice, every betrayal. I changed no names. Aaron called me when she received hers. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. You're ruining my life. No, Aaron. I documented what you did. You ruined mine. I simply held up a mirror. A few months later, I stood in my new apartment, a smaller place, sure, but filled with peace. A guitar leaned against the wall. Books I finally had time to read stacked on the table. A quiet kettle boiled in the background. And then a knock on the door. It was Camille. No announcement. No tears. Just a smile and 2 cups of coffee. I got promoted, she said. We sat on the balcony, watching the city move. She told me about her job, her classes, and the new guy she was seeing. I listened. I laughed. I let her talk. When she finished, she looked at me and said, I still call you Dad, you know, even when no one's around. I smiled. That's because I still am. And I was. Not because of DNA, but because of presence. Because of consistency. Because I chose to stay even when I had every reason to walk away. And that's the real revenge. Not the legal victories. Not the exposed affairs. Not the downfall of the man who thought he stole my life. The real revenge was becoming better without them. Living fully. Loving truthfully. And letting them live with the silence of my absence. To anyone out there going through betrayal, remember this. Your power is not in your pain. It's in what you do after. And that's what they'll never control again.